Welcome to Guardian Live at Labour Conference. Can I ask you, just standing around the edges, today's a very popular event, can I ask you to move down a little bit? So can we give a warm welcome to the Editor-in-Chief of The Guardian, Katharine Viner, and the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan.
There's a real problem about the amount of empty homes there are in all of London. I think there's a great phrase, ghost mansions and zombie flats. We did a big expose on The Guardian last year about St George's Tower, that ugly tower in Vauxhall on the river, which is, we revealed is completely underoccupied, astonishingly expensive, mostly foreign owned, and dozens of the apartments have actually held through secretive offshore firms. What can be done about all this? You know, you talk about what's happening at the poorest end. What about at the richest end? What can be done about how the super rich are kind of destroying central London?
So we're doing a number of things to address this issue. Firstly, we need a sea change in the attitude from central government. That doesn't look like it's happening. So we've got to do what we can in London. So we asked some experts, academics, to go and do some research as to what the position is in London. And the bad news is there are a considerable number of properties being bought as investments, gold bricks, by investors overseas. What compounds that bad news is actually half of the properties they're buying are between 200,000 and 500,000. So they're not the luxury end. These are homes that Londoners could probably afford if they weren't bought off-plan overseas to investors in the Middle East and the Far East.
Well, they'd probably be cheaper then as well, because there'd be less interest.
So they're being bought by people overseas. They're at a price which Londoners could afford. But what compounds that even more is they're being left empty. So we're doing a number of things to address that, from things like saying to local authorities, you should, as a condition of permission, say to a developer for the first 3 months or the first 6 months, local residents get first dibs. We're going to set up a portal from City Hall where Londoners can see where the properties are and they get first dibs in these properties.
You can enforce that. Can you enforce that?
Absolutely. We can make sure it's a term of planning permission, and also I'm working on a new draft London plan. But also I'm lobbying the government to change the rules around empty properties. And you know what? We've got allies in Tory councils. The leader of Tory Westminster agrees with me that actually it's a travesty that there are homes that have been left empty, and you pay sort of a minuscule increase in council tax, which if you're somebody who can afford to have a second, third, fourth home in London, it's nothing. Yeah, no. And so there are things that central government's got to do, but we're not going to wait for those changes to happen. We're doing stuff in London as we speak.
I mean, if you walk by City Hall at night, if you walk along the Thames, it's just dark. The Thames is dark because all of those flats are empty. It's very depressing.
Well, there's some parts of London around the riverside in Battersea as well, where there are curtains that are not closed, lights that are not open, and it's quite clear that these units aren't homes.
All these empty homes and people not being able to afford rent or to buy, plus Brexit, sort of with the threat of lots of jobs leaving the city. Do you ever fear that London is in real trouble as the mayor?
No. And you really, of course, I mean, there are real challenges we face. You know, one of the biggest concerns I have, and I speak as a child of immigrants, is for the first time in centuries, the next generation could be less well off than the current one, for a number of reasons. The housing crisis, Brexit, the challenges we face with globalisation, making sure we all enjoy the fruits of globalisation, particularly at a time when there are the rise of narrow populist parties across Europe and across the world. But I'm optimistic. Why? Because the underlying strengths of London are still there. Our ability to attract talent, our ability to attract innovation.
That'll go with Brexit. Won't that go with Brexit?
Well, don't believe the hype. I mean, of course, we've got to make sure we do a good
You're pro-Brexit now?
We do a good deal. No, God forbid. But we do a good deal with the European Union. Look, it's really important. I make this point to Brexiteers. If you were in favour of leaving the European Union, it's in your interest to make Brexit work for London and the country. That means recognising that London is crucial for our country's well-being, recognising that we need to continue to attract talent. By the way, London was the one region in England to vote to remain in the EU. What does that tell you? One, that we need immigration. Two, we want it. So we've got to carry on being able to attract talent. My view is we've got to continue being members of the single market. I think the customs union is very important. But actually, in London, we have 1 million Londoners, and they're Londoners, by the way, who are EU citizens. My message to the government is, thank God they're here, because they contribute economically, culturally, and socially. We should be saying thank you to them for the contribution they make, but also giving them a cast iron guarantee that things won't change.
Are we not going to be members of the single market, though?
Well, you know, don't speak too soon. I mean, you know, if we'd have been having this conversation in May or in April, what Theresa May was talking about is no transitional arrangement, forget no membership of single market, no access to a single market, no real offer for EU citizens in the UK, roughly 3.3 million, and the public reason she gave for calling the referendum was to give her the mandate for there to be more certainty. Well, the British public rejected that offer she made of a Tory extreme hard Brexit. So I think the goalposts have moved.
So Brexit might not mean Brexit.
Well, let's wait and see. I was never quite clear what Theresa May meant by that.
I think that's why she used the line. So you mentioned Jeremy Corbyn in the election, and what do you make of it?
I think the results were fantastic in London in particular. We didn't win the general election, and everyone who's been at the receiving end of the Tory government will know as well as I do that the Tories are still in power. But the context is this. It's really important we understand the context. I gave you the public reason for Theresa May calling the general election. The private reason was Theresa May saw that she was 20 points ahead and she saw a chance to wipe out Labour. And not only did she not wipe out Labour, we kept what we had and we made significant progress. I think we made gains of 30-odd MPs. The Labour share of the votes, I accept we didn't win. The Labour share of the vote was 40%.
I mean, the result surprised almost everyone, I mean, right up to Corbyn himself. What do you put it down to?
Jeremy Corbyn. I mean, Jeremy Corbyn's energy, his authenticity. Look, a number of things can happen during a campaign. You can grow, you can shrink. And we saw one leader who shrunk and one leader who grew. And he's authentic. And, the rule in politics that I always subscribe to is the rule that I learned from the West Wing, which is, to paraphrase, let Jeremy be Jeremy. And Jeremy was Jeremy. What happened? Good manifesto, energising Labour supporters who left our fold, bringing them back, energised a new generation of voters, and that was important because there is now a new dimension to the equation, which is not relying upon the normal people who vote at a general election, but trying to persuade people who previously haven't voted in general election to vote in a general election. So huge progress made by Jeremy in the space of 2 years. A summit should be 5 years' time because you've got a 5-year fixed-term parliament, Tories passed legislation, and there have been some staging posts along the way. I think Jeremy's exceeded expectations for those staging posts, but we've got to carry on climbing that mountain if we're going to reach the summit, which is a Labour government with Jeremy Corbyn as Prime Minister.